Welcome to the Stone Soup Intuitive Spiritual Center. My mom has been researching and learning about a lot of different philosophies and viewpoints and perspectives that differ from her regular belief system. One day she asked me, do you want to go to this meditation session with me? I don't like to pass up on opportunities, so I was like, yeah, why not? I'll give it a shot. The meditation itself is very fascinating, but me personally, I'm not as fascinated by meditation as I am fascinated by people. The thing that really kept me going was simply just curiosity about the people there. Maybe it was his vibe, maybe it was the stories that he told, and maybe it was just the fact that he didn't wear any shoes. But the one person I really wanted to learn more about was Lance Bozek. Asking a man that I just met to do an interview for my YouTube channel for me was really outside my comfort zone. The meditation before I asked him, I was really anxious, which is one of the main reasons I actually did it in the first place, because I figured if I could do this, I'd have the courage to do a lot more that I want to do in the future. So how, to someone that's never met you or doesn't know anything about you, how would you describe yourself? Really just a brief summary.
How do I describe myself? I would say that everything that I do on helping the individual to discover more about themselves. So my podcast is called the Divine Journey Podcast. It's all about helping spiritual truth seekers understand what their journey is meant to be, understand the challenges that are around the spiritual, call it the spiritual quote unquote awakening, if you want to call it that. So everything that I do, whether it's leading a meditation class, a yoga class, that podcast, interacting here at Stone Soup, everything that I do, I feel like my purpose in life is to help people walk that path with grace as they can and become the best versions of themselves that they can be.
Hey there, just popping in here. I don't think this mic is connected. It definitely was in the test. I don't know what happened.
Testing, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Also, every now and again, there was a little beep that cut out the audio. So if he gets cut off halfway through his sentence, that's just because I was trying to fix the audio. I'll try to make the subtitles make it make sense. I'm sorry. So I feel like there's a journey we got to go through to get to where you're describing. What would you say that your journey, how did you find yourself in the position that you're in, with the mindset that you had?
So the funny thing you asked that question, the work that I feel like I'm meant to do is to help people walk that journey that you just described that I walked.
Yeah.
So I feel like for me, I've always been very introspective. Even when I was very, very young, I always sort of self-analyzed. It was a big part of it, was always questioning things. But also I was, say, gifted with physical challenges, and so my body is highly sensitive to my environment.
Yeah.
Not just energetically, some people may
overstimulated.
Very overstimulated. I even am very sensitive to the foods I eat, and the longer as I get older and I get more in tune with that, the more I realize the nuances of that. So, and just like anybody else, oftentimes when you start walking this journey, there's usually some kind of catalyst that's just sort of it's a spark that sort of sets the fire ablaze, and then you start asking all these questions and you go down a rabbit hole.
Yeah.
And for me, in around 2008, when we had the financial crash, I had been questioning several things for myself for a couple of years, and just been I didn't like my life. I looked around, I was like, I don't like the job I have. Didn't really connect with the friends that I had at the time. I just realized there was more to something. And so I started asking a lot of questions.
How old were you at that point?
So that was around 2008, and I was born in 76. I was 32. Is that math right? 76, 86, 96. Yeah. So I was about 30, 32, which is fairly normal.
Yeah.
When I see people go on this journey, some people do it a lot earlier, but oftentimes around the mid-30s, people start asking some pretty significant questions. And around this journey, that sort of started going down and asking a lot of questions, and one thing led to another. I was living in Utah at the time, and basically my entire life just crashed down around me, and I was left with, okay, well, what else is there? I filed bankruptcy and just wiped the slate clean and said, like, okay, what is my life meant to be like?
Yeah.
And just started asking questions. A big thing that I had come to the realization of was that I felt like I could work hard at a normal job and still not be able to afford the average lifestyle.
Yeah.
I could still not afford to put a roof over my head and make sure that I had everything I needed. And I just looked at that system. I was like, something's broken. I don't like that. On top of that, I was 32 years old and hadn't had a job for more than a year. The same job for more than a year.
Oh, yeah.
Since I was 15. So I was like, okay, something's wrong here too, because people around me, my dad, for example, had the same job for 40 years and had never changed, and he was perfectly happy with that. And I was like, I don't understand how you can, he had the same question, how can you not be happy with that? And I had the same question, how could you be happy with that, right?
Yeah.
And so that led to a deeper inquiry of like, well, if this system's broken and I'm never satisfied with being an employee at a job, it's like, what else is there? Like, how else can I do this equation? And one thing led to another, did a lot of inquiry, but just started looking into living off the land-based communities, sustainability, and basically just said, okay, instead of getting a job so that they can give me money, I can take that money and then buy the things I need. I said, well, why don't I take the middleman out of the equation and just provide the things that I need?
Yeah.
And so that led to a lot of more inquiries, a lot more investigations. Got certified with permaculture design, and just started understanding, like, can you put living systems together, animal systems, like animal husbandry systems with food growing systems, with your necessary shelter needs, all those kinds of things, and have it be holistic in approach, and where no one thing is more important than the other.
This is a little later, but we started talking about the contributions that people make to society.
Yeah, in fact, that was also one of the things that I felt was broken in our society, was that our society only honors and respects those who are adding to the GDP, those who are actively producing a good that can be sold. So in other words, in our society here in the US, we put less value on children who will become those producers in the future, but we don't put a lot of investment into that. Until they become that, it's less of an investment. If you're retired and elderly, we put those people in a home somewhere, and we don't value their contribution once they're no longer working. We start putting all kinds of limitations on ourselves.
That's true. What would you change about, like, the overall mindset that the society has to, like, better inspire kids to just, like, stay with the ideals and beliefs they have?
Oh boy. To be honest, we have to overhaul our education system. So for the individual, so we can look at it from two sides. You can look at it from the individual standpoint. I actually have several friends right now who are homeschooling their kids.
Yeah.
And I've known a lot of people, especially living in Utah. There's a much stronger homeschooling community there. There's a lot more people who homeschool their kids, and I knew a number of people who did it.
Yeah.
And in my experience, it is almost unquestionably the kids who were homeschooled were much more well-balanced, much more inquisitive, much more, I'm not going to say they had a higher IQ, but they were more intelligent. So like if a kid showed natural, questions around a particular topic, they would guide the education and the experiences towards that so that they could further that.
Yeah.
And so I think the best thing I can say, and this is actually a message that was really coming through for me this morning, in fact, just in my own meditations, was I am enough. Like, I have the tools at my disposal right here, right now, to address the challenges that are in front of me. I don't have to go out looking for something outside of myself. And so I think that idea of just tuning into that intuition, that inner guidance, and doing your best not to lose that.
Do you think every kid is going to have that like natural inquiry, or do you think some people would work better in a like more rigid system?
Well, I think that's another good question. I think that what we also need to do is honor the differences. We need to do a better job of honoring the fact that not everybody is the same. And so, yeah, there will be individuals, there will be children who do better when they have more structure around them.
Since he brought up homeschoolers, I brought up the fact that when I was involved in Christianity, a lot of people in the church would homeschool their kid, but limit what they taught them and expose them to. I'm doing the voiceover since you don't have to hear the chainsaw in the background.
Religion's a funny thing. If it works for you, it works for you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think there are certain things that are wonderful about it. I think one of the downsides of organized religion, it doesn't encourage personal inquiry.
Sure.
And in any system that doesn't encourage personal inquiry, I think there's a negative consequence to that. Regardless of what your beliefs are, it doesn't matter. Personally, I support everyone in exploring their own personal beliefs. The problem is that when you have an organization or a structure that gives you certain guidelines and doesn't encourage you to question if those guidelines are appropriate.
Yeah.
Or do you fit those guidelines or anything like that? And so, you know, and unfortunately, a lot of times, religions have gotten to a point where it's all about control.
Yeah.
I mean, our government's the same way, so it's not just religion. When you have people who get into a certain amount of power, they want to retain that power. Mm-hmm. And they want, and someone in power generally wants people to go along with their authority.
Yeah.
And so it's not beneficial to them to encourage personal inquiry.
Yeah.
And that's the unfortunate part of it.
So if there's someone that's in, like, by our standards, a very unhealthy place, like they've just been, all they really ever use to view things in the world is what they've been taught, and they're just very limited within their own mind, and their relationships are kind of toxic. Mm-hmm. Do you think that their personal inquiry is like the key to kind of unlocking who they really are, or do you think that there's more to it?
I think that ultimately what happens, there's one or two things happens. Mm-hmm. You're either in this structured system and you're totally fine with it, and you're just going along with life, and you're like, why can everybody else not go along with this? I'm totally fine with this. And if you're happy with that, who am I to question why you're happy with it, right? So, like, cool, whatever. I think, but on the flip side of that, and so, like, who am I to say that they're unhealthy, mm-hmm. right? Like, if they're in the quote unquote matrix and they're enjoying their life, why am I, why is it my position to say, oh, you're not living a healthy life? So everything that I do also is about, I invite people to explore something, or, whatever it is. Even in my classes, like, I'm offering this, you can take as much or as little as you want to with it. I think what happens is that people start questioning things when it's no longer working for them.
Yeah.
Right? If you're happy with something, why would you want to change that? Right? So it's when things don't go well, that's when people start asking questions. Mm-hmm. And so it does, I think it does start with that personal inquiry. Now the inquiry they might not have the ability in the moment or early on to be super self-inquisitive. Like, they might not, have that ability to, or the skills yet. They might have not developed, or more likely they've forgotten the skills of self-inquiry, because they were when they were much younger. But I think Yeah, I think there's two. I think there's two things. Part is self-inquiry, and part is healthy community.
Yeah.
Right. So in other words, if something's not working for you, get around people that are supportive of whatever it is you're trying to do. You know, if you're in a situation where you're unhappy, first ask why you're unhappy. What is it about the situation that's not working? And then from that, you can start sort of unraveling the journey. That's the other thing I will say, is that there is no easy button, right? There is no, and this is that one size fits all way of life. Like everybody wants we're used to this idea of, I've got this issue. Let's say I've got some problem I'm going to go to the doctor with. When I go to the doctor's going to give me a pill, I'm going to make it feel better, I'm going to go about my life. That doesn't always work. And in fact, the more holistic, healthy way is that's not the way to do it. Now, there are times where modern medicine and a doctor absolutely are beneficial, and that's not to say that you don't use them. But I guess my point is, in answering your question there, is that sometimes we just need to, one of the things is asking ourselves, are the people around me and the systems around me, are they supportive of my questions? Are they supportive of me improving and getting healthier? Or do I feel like something's always tearing me down?
Yeah.
And if that's the case, then, maybe there's some changes that need to be made.
Yeah. I agree with that.
I will say, though, that, sometimes we have to tear things down in order to make them better. So sometimes, if I'm going to build a new life, well, I've got to tear down the old one in order to make room for the new one.
Yeah.
So sometimes there is a tearing down process that has to happen. If I decide that this is no longer working for me, okay. But I think the idea is this path, or is this environment supportive of my long-term health and vibrancy, or am I just being torn down all the time? That kind of thing.
Thanks so much for spending time. It was very interesting to hear from you. I feel like I learned a lot.
Cool.
I'm really glad I did this, though. I think my biggest takeaway is his idea of self-inquiry. I've known that self-awareness and questioning things has always been healthy, but he put it into words really well, and I would also agree that it's probably the most important key to bettering yourself. Anyway, have a good day. Bye. I love you.